I love when I can take my art journaling, mixed media, supplies, and techniques and use them to create beautiful home decor items, like this illuminated wine bottle. You are going to want to create this, and it's so easy, you won't believe it. So what you're looking at here are all the things that you need to create these illuminated wine bottles. You, of course, need a clear wine bottle. The rest of the stuff you can get from Ninny's Napkins. These cork lights, you get a set of two. They come in soft white and bright light. This napkin, as along with a whole variety of napkins, comes from Ninny's Napkins, Polyvine Varnish, Decorators Varnish, but I'm going to use Fluid Matte Medium. I believe you can get that there too. And you're going to need at least a couple sheets of blank rice paper. Couple brushes. Now I've got a bag of rice here. That's so that the bottle can sit on it and so it doesn't roll around on my desktop, just to make life a little bit easier. So the first thing that you want to do is to prepare the rice paper, and that is really super simple. What we want to do is remove any of the straight edges. We want the frayed edges, the deckled edges, the feathered edges of it. And what I'm doing here is water cutting it. I'm taking a liner brush and putting a line of water down there and then just breaking it off so that I get rid of that straight edge. So I'm just going to go down and do this to all four sides of the rice paper. In a minute, I'm going to show you a shortcut because I found an even faster way of doing that. And as always, I will bring you some of the tips and tricks that I learn along the way. Now, this is the first time I'm attempting this, so I am learning as I go. Using the water cutting technique on rice paper is actually easier than with napkins, but there are some differences. So I'm just going down the line with my fine line brush, my liner brush, and getting rid of those straight edges. Once the straight edges are there, I am going to rip this into different shapes and sizes of rice paper. The reason you want different shapes and unpredictability is just going to add to the finished project. We are going to cover the entire bottle with this rice paper. And then when the lights shine through it, you're going to see that. So the different shapes and the overlapping just adds to the whole look of the illuminated bottle. So I'm just ripping it all up and preparing this for the next stage. So I just rip up one and then I am going to glue that down and then I go back and I glue the other one while that first one is drying. So I have my whole pile. I'm ready to go, but you can rip both sheets up at the same time. So there's my bottle on the rice bag and I'm using Fluid Matte Medium because I wanted to test out to see if it worked with the rice paper. And here's the answer. Absolutely. I did not see any difference. It illuminated perfectly fine. Now, when you put the Fluid Matte Medium, this is the Liquitex brand, on, it goes on cloudy, but it dries clear. And I am using a generous amount of it, soaking it into that rice paper. I'm putting a layer underneath and then a layer on top. And as you can see, I am overlapping the pieces of rice paper. Don't try to get too much out of it, try to be skimpy with the Fluid Matte Medium or with the rice paper. You want that overlapping. You definitely don't want gaps in your bottle because that's going to show once you start illuminating it. So again, I'm just brushing it on. The brush here is something that I just picked up in a set of 3, I believe, at Michael's on sale. And I'm just putting it on and moving around. don't overthink this. It really doesn't matter. Just making, the only thing you need to do is generous portion and make sure you're overlapping randomness, different sizes and shapes. And you can see how I did it. Now I do end up covering or putting it in the bottom at personal choice, whether you do or you don't. It's sitting on it all the time, so it's really not necessary. But I like wrapping it around it just to make it a little more finished looking. I do speed up the video in different portions if it's highly repetitive, but this bottle from beginning to end with complete dry time, an hour, hour and a half to do. And that's me figuring out how to do it and solving some problems along the way. I'm going to continue that rice paper right up the neck of the bottle. Now, if you had a bottle that was a dark color or a different color, that isn't going to illuminate exactly the same way. So, not that you can't do it, it's just going to give a very different effect. And it, around the neck of the bottle, the paper kind of squishes in and fits to the form without any problem at all. I'm sure somebody's going to ask, why can't you just paint them white like you do in a lot of decoupage? If you painted it white with the acrylic paint, that or chalk paint, it's opaque and it's going to block out or diminish how much it can illuminate, the effect that you're getting. Here we want to see the inside of the bottle. The lights that are going to go in the inside of the bottle. We want to see the patterning of the rice paper and what we put on it. So that's why we want it more translucent rather than opaque, where we can't see light through it. So I'm kind of wrapping it around a little bit, but I do stop here at some point in time and I let it dry because the underside that it's sitting on still needs to be done. So you do need to allow for airtime or for it to dry by air, or you can, as you're going to see me doing it, use a heat tool. I use the Ranger heat tool. I just don't put it really close up against the bottle just in case. I don't know if the heat's going to make it crack, but you know. So at that point, I don't want to muck up anything that I've already put on. So I am going to give it some time to dry. And while that's off to drying, I'm going to prepare the second sheet of rice paper. And here I'm just showing that I am using the heat tool, but I'm not putting it right on it. I'm moving it around so that it can dry. And you can see the patterning that's there with the rice paper where I've overlapped it. It's very random, you know, and that just adds to the overall piece. Of course, we're going to add some more layers to this, as you'll see. I will put a link to Ninny's Napkins down below, and you can go check out the supplies that she has for the illuminated bottles. More about that. So here I grab a wider brush. This is a round brush. It holds more water and I'm going right along the edge. It just even makes the water cutting so much easier than with that fine brush. So I upped the size of the brush and it just made it a little bit easier to do. The difference between water cutting with napkins and rice paper, you can use a thicker brush, more water, and you might need to wait a little bit for it to soak in so to be able to rip it. Napkin, you need very little water, finer brush. But these are just brushes that I have in my stash. If you don't have them, definitely check out Ninny's Napkins. Now, as I was saying, NINNYSNAPKINS.com, she's got illuminated bottle kits where you get the cork lights, the rice paper, 10 sheets of rice paper, brushes, and I believe the Polyvine varnish all comes in the kit. You'll have to go and make sure that I'm including all of that. The napkin doesn't um, come with the kit because, of course, you can use whatever napkin you want for whatever theme you want. So you can check that out, or you can buy rice paper separately and the cork lights separately if you have those other things in your stash. So you can figure out what works best for you. What do you already have versus what do you need? FYI, the rice paper, you can feed this rice paper through the printer and print on it and then use that in your art journaling and mixed media projects. So here I'm just preparing the rice paper, again, the second sheet, and for the most part, you need about 2 sheets to cover one white bottle or one wine bottle. There were a few pieces left over, which I'll save because I do have 2 cork lights that come with the kit, or so I will be at least making 2 kits. I'd also plan or 2 wine bottles. My plan is to make more, maybe make 5 or 6 different themes, and then just keep using the same cork lights in different seasons. So once that one side is dry, now I can rest it on the rice bag. And I'm just continuing along doing the same thing that I did. And you can see right here where it's very white, and because the matte medium is very fresh, and off to the side, it's become a little clearer. It's a little more translucent, and that's going to allow those cork lights to shine through. This didn't quite cover. I had a gap there, so I'm piecing it elsewhere. And but you can see with the rice paper, you can lift it up and put it somewhere else. I did end up using that piece elsewhere, even though it was already had been applied. The cork lights come in two different colors. You get the warm light and then cool white, warm white, cool white. And I have picked the warm ones. And then I picked a napkin that looks better with that. So again, there's some differences there. And it comes down to personal preference. I did try to get something that has a relatively straight edge to go across the top of the bottle, and the same thing in the bottom, just to make it easier. Just checking, making sure that I've covered the whole bottle. I'm just going to put my brush in a plastic bag so that it dries because I'm going to be using it some more. And here's what I have left over. So I'm just going to save that in a plastic baggie. And when I do the next bottle, I can use that. So nothing goes to waste. I could also use it in mixed media projects. So that was my angel. This is another napkin. These are other napkins from Ninny's Napkins that I think would look beautiful on the bottle. You can have colors or more neutral ones. Really, whatever you prefer is what you can use. Now, let's prepare the napkin. What I've done is just rough cut around the angel, and I've got 2 angels here. And at this point, I'm thinking I'm going to put one on the front and one on the back. Spoiler alert, I only end up using one. So, and then the back side, I've put some other details. So you're probably only, depending on what focal image you put on there and how you design it. And again, the sky's the limit. So you want to peel off the 2 excess layers from the napkin. And Ninny says that all the napkins that she carries have 2 excess plies. So you want to peel that off before you do the water cutting and before you glue them on. So right now I want to remove any of the excess from the napkin. So I've switched back to my very finest liner brush, and I've got a limited amount of water on there, and I'm going to put the water right next to it and do little bits at a time. Don't put the water too much. If it's, seeping into the napkin, you may need to cut back on the amount of water. And again, you can use a pair of scissors. If you are opting to use scissors, keep the excess layers on until you've cut it out. It just makes it a little bit easier to hold the napkin, as it's really difficult to cut one layer of napkin. And again, I want that deckled edge because I want the edges to disappear when I glue it down onto my substrate. In this case, the wine bottle. Typically, compared to rice paper, I'm doing a smaller section at a time, putting a small section and getting it to tear away, and then another small section, get it to tear away. Now, this napkin, the background wasn't white. If it's white, you have a lot more leniency. It's going to be a little bit easier and it's going to disappear better. This one is kind of off-white, so it would kind of give a little bit of a shadow to it. So I want to get as close as I can to the angel. The biggest mistake I think people make when they're doing this is they try to do it too quickly in too big of a span and just make it harder for yourself. And again, I'm doing this now. The bottle is drying, but I did use my heat tool to speed up that process. You can use a hair dryer, you know, if that's what you have. And there we have it. The angel is done. And so at this point, again, I was going to do the other angel. Now, I've already put the lights in. I do show later how to put them in. I just wanted to see how much of the girl I could see because the girl was very neutral. I wasn't sure I was going to see any detailing here. But you can see, even with the lights on, how that illuminated bottle looks, and it even shines through the focal image that I've chosen. So now that I'm positioning it, it's going to fit on there. I'm just putting a good coat of the fluid matte medium again. Then I'm going to position my focal image where I want it, tack it down so it holds, and then I'm going to get a good amount of the fluid matte medium on my brush, and from the center, work my way out. You don't want to have your brush too dry. You want it fairly wet. That means for less friction, which means you're less likely to rip the napkin. The napkin at this stage, once it gets wet, is very fragile, and you don't want to rip a hole in it. So start at the middle and brush outward. And I found that using the thicker brush here, the wider brush, really made this a little simpler. So on my mixed media art journal pages, I might be using this brush a lot more when I'm gluing down napkins in my focal image. It just made it a little bit easier, less brush strokes, less chance of um, ripping the paper. And now I want to give it a dry again. Now the girl I liked, but I wanted to try to overpaint it. I wanted to change the color a little bit, make it stand out a little bit. Unfortunately, I lost the footage when I did it on the wine bottle. So I have glued this girl, this other angel, onto a card, but I'm going to show you how I colored the one on the bottle. And I'm using my Inktense blocks. And the reason I chose to use the Inktense blocks is because the paint is not opaque. A lot of my acrylics will be more opaque, and I did not want to use them because I want them to be illuminated. I want the lights to shine through my focal image, even if I want a wash of color. So my Inktense blocks give that wash of color, but are not opaque. They're very translucent, and the light continue to shine through them, as you'll see in the final product. So here I'm just using the brush, adding water, and then painting the skirt just to adjust it, to add a little bit of color. I want this to look good, not only when it's lit, but when it's just sitting on my counter or in my home. So I'm just chosen the color. Here I've gone with kind of a Naples yellow. So I've stuck to fairly neutral, but I could have made her coral. I could have made her blue. And there's the finished one that you again will see. But I did exactly the same thing on the bottle as you see me doing here on a card. So the steps that I'm showing you are the same, even though the substrate is different. And that's what I loved about so much of this mixed media, because you can use those same techniques. Doesn't matter what your um, substrate is. I love this My Angel napkin. It is so versatile. You can make cards, you can put it on the illuminated bottle. I've done it on an art journal page. I think I'm going to show you that, and I will link the video where I've combined it with other napkins. Here I painted her hair red. On the bottle, I kept it brown. So again, you can change the colors of the napkin, especially this one that was so very, very neutral. And yet all the shading that the artist of the napkin did is preserved. So I'm just putting a wash of color on there, making it my own. So I painted the dress, her hair, her arms and legs with the Inktense blocks. Now, Inktense blocks, if you're not familiar with them, are a great product to use in mixed media. They are ink. They are permanent once they are dry, unlike watercolors that will reactivate. So once this is down here, if I put a coat of varnish on it, it doesn't reactivate and smear. Just adding some greenery to the wreath in her hair. Now, for the wings, for the feathers in the wings, what I'm doing is using gesso. Now, gesso is opaque, but I'm putting it on with a small round brush, and there are gaps in between. And in the final pictures, when it's illuminated, it still shines through, but it gives a little bit of a different effect with the gesso there because it is more opaque. And this was experimenting. I was trying to push the limit. I was testing out Does the fluid matte medium work as well as the Polyvine varnish? Yes. Can I colorize my napkin? Can I overpaint it with the Inktense blocks? Yes. Can I put some gesso on that and still have it illuminated, the illumination come through? Yes. So pushing the limit, testing the waters, trying different things that, again, I use in my mixed media projects, in my art journaling projects. How can I make it work with the illuminated bottle? Here I'm just adding a few places. I'm adding a little bit of gesso. Again, when the light shines through, where the gesso is looks different than where the gesso isn't. But I like the effect. Could you have left the napkin as is without any overpainting? Absolutely. And when I watch Ninny do the tutorial, that's exactly what they did. They just glued it down. They did not overpaint it. I just wanted to see if I could and how that affected things. Here I'm just adding some shading with my angle brush and some black acrylic paint. I just want to differentiate, outline the girl a little bit more. Again, I want her to stand out against my very neutral bottle. Now this card, I do finish this card. I will include the complete tutorial for this card when I do a whole series of Christmas cards. So I'll combine it with 2 or 3 other cards, and so you can look for that coming up in the near future. But I did want you to see how I overpainted on the bottle. Here's the art journal page that I did, slightly different girl. I will link that video too. So 1 napkin and 3 different substrates, 3 different uses, 3 different effects. So look at the variation that you have. Now this is an excess napkin ply. And I am going to make some embellishments to put where my girl isn't. I'm going to use the champagne gold stencil butter. And I'm going to use these star stamps. This is from the Stamperia Christmas set that I got from NINNYSNAPKINS. So I am just going to use the stencil butter. It's like modeling paste, a little bit thinner, but I am going to use it to stamp with. And that's going to give me some texture. It's going to make it a little 3D. It's not going to lie flat. So that's what I wanted to add to my bottle. So I put it on the block. I'm just stamping into the stencil butter, and then I'm stamping onto the excess napkin. So I just do this. This is a little bit tedious to do, but I'm going to do a whole bunch of it, and then I have them in my stash to use on a card on an art journal page. And stars, they're pretty general. I can get a lot of use out of it. So I've got 3 sizes of star stamps here. Now, when you stamp on the napkin, remember the napkin, when you glue it down with the matte medium, goes completely transparent. You're not going to see it. What you're only going to see is the stamped image, in this case, the stars. Now, if I was stamping on the bottle is round and it's awkward to stamp. And if I make a mistake, then I've wrecked my rice paper. So this allows me to make sure I get a good stamp, because if it doesn't stamp very well here, I don't have to use it. I don't have to clean it. I can just throw it in the garbage. No, no fair, no foul. If I was stamping right on the bottle and it was a mess, I'd have a cleanup to do, and maybe it would wreck the bottle. And it's really awkward, again, to stamp on a surface. So here's how you can get texture onto a round surface without risk. So I'm just going through and stamping with the modeling paste stencil butter. Then I grab my pearl white stencil butter and I do the same thing. Now you're thinking, well, white isn't going to show. The napkin goes transparent when I glue it on, and all that's left is that white, very neutral stamped image, but you do see it, especially in the illuminated bottle. And I love the pearl white. It has that iridescent pearlized effect. You can use regular modeling paste or thick gesso for this as well. So again, I use all three sizes stars, and I'm building my stash here. Once I have it out on my desk, once I've got dirtied the stamp, I'm going to maximize it. And I thought, you know what? I have a stencil from the Crafter's Workshop with stars, different size stars. What if I wanted some solid stars? At this point, I'm not sure how many of these or what I'm going to use exactly, but I have the supplies out, so I am going to just maximize my time and clean up and do that. Here I'm just applying it with the palette knife through the stencil with these stars. So don't throw out those excess plies and napkins. I just fold them up and I keep them in a file folder. And for projects like this, it's perfect. You could just use acrylic paint here, gold. You just won't get that textured look. So if you were doing this with your bottle, maybe I would do this first as a stash builder to make sure that it's completely dry. This didn't take very long to dry. Now here I am just going to, you guessed it, I'm water cutting out the stars. And I'm going around and cutting out various sizes because again, I don't know exactly what I want to use on the bottle. I'm going to do some trial and some auditioning and figuring it out as I go. So here, all I'm doing is water cutting it. And where the stencil butter is, it kind of makes a wall. So it makes it really easy to get right up close, get rid of most of that napkin. Now, with these stars, they're open in the middle, and that napkin's there, but it's white. And when I put the matte medium on it, when I glue it down, it goes completely transparent. You don't even know it's there. You're going to see the rice paper come through the back. So again, it takes a little bit of time. It's a little bit tedious to do this, but well worth the final product. So I have the lights in there and I'm going to use my fluid matte medium again. And you can see I've got that white star there and I've got one gold one. And you can see once they're dry how they are showing up. So I'm just putting a coat of the fluid matte medium underneath, putting the star where I want it randomly, and then a coat of matte medium on top, just like you did with the rice paper and the napkin. So I'm just going to put this all around the bottle as much or as little as you want. Now, I could have cut out holly from a napkin. I could have cut out a poinsettia from a napkin or snowflakes or other images and glued those on. I could have put a border around the bottom. Again, you are limited only by your imagination about what you can do. I did not want my angel bottle to be strictly Christmas. So I opted not to put poinsettias, not to put anything that was Christmassy or really wintry. So I went for stars. But again, you do you. What do you want? I think poinsettias would look so beautiful around the bottom or throughout the bottle. So every bottle can be completely different. So again, the fluid matte medium goes on and it's cloudy. It dries perfectly clear. So I do dry this every once in a while. I stop and dry it. You don't want to get your finger in it and move it. It'll rip it and bunch it up and wreck your hard work. Here I'm putting some of those solid stars in. I've got all the white ones on, and now I'm putting some of these solid stars. And I like the combination of both of those effects. I could have also chosen at this point to splatter gold paint onto the bottle. I'll have to save that for another bottle. I do have this flat, but I was worried that I was going to roll it. So I did end up finishing this by standing the bottle up on end, but that doesn't make for good video, so that footage isn't it isn't part of the video. I'm just looking, do I like what I have? Then I decided just to add a little bit difference, I'm painting gold around the top, and then I do the same with the bottom of the bottle, just to finish it off. I did end up taking out the lights, but I will be showing you how they go into the bottle. Here I'm just putting the gold along the bottom. I love that those stars in the background. It just added so much to finish off the bottle. I apologize that some of this is off camera, but I just wanted to make sure that you saw this step if that's something that you want to do on your bottle. So these are the corkscrews. They come like that. You pull out a plastic piece to engage the battery, and then you have to stretch it out and then feed it into the bottle. Now, I like to turn it on so I can see where the lights are, how they're bunched up inside. Because depending on how it goes in, it looks different. You want to get that light spread out from the bottom to the top evenly, and you want it to look nice. The first time I put it through, it was kind of bunched in certain areas and I didn't like it. You can pull it out and reinsert it, or you could use a wooden skewer and move it around till you get it how you like it. No shortcut, just play around till you get it the way you want it. And I just find that adding it lit helps you figure that out. And you can adjust as you are going. But there's lots of wire there and it fits all in. What a great invention this cork light system is. Because the battery is in the cork. So it's nothing that has to be outside of the bottle. And there you have it. And there it is lit. I like how the balance of the lights, look at those stars, everything. And I'm turning off the light here. I do show one later in the evening. I love, love, love how this turned out. So there is a little bit of a close-up of it. Love the stars. You could just do a bottle with the stars, and that just makes me happy as is with that rice paper. Beautiful. And here's the finished card. Remember, I will include that in a Christmas card making mixed media session coming. And there it is, lit up at night. It is beautiful, a great addition to my home decor. I hope you give the illuminated wine bottle a try. Check out Ninny's Napkins for any of the supplies that you may need. Until next time, go get creative.